summer. And there we go. Perfect. I can confirm we do indeed have quorum for this meeting this afternoon. I do have regrets from Hanny Phillip and Councillor Tozo. So our able Vice Chair River will be handling us going through the meeting. And I will ask all those who are not currently members of the committee, if they're not speaking or anything, to kindly turn off their videos. And if you are speaking, to turn on your videos if you can. So with all that out of the way, very happy to turn it over to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you so much, Ian. All right, so I will call this meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. Our second item is the approval of the agenda. So I will require a vote for that. Can I have a, oh wait, no. So all in favor of the approval of the agenda? All opposed?
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, Vice Chair. I do require a mover and a seconder for the agenda.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
So I guess I will ask for a mover. Councillor Ridge, and a seconder, Jacqueline. All right. Thank you so much. And then we have the confirmation of the minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or additions to the minutes? If there are none, I'm going to once again ask for a mover, Ian, and a seconder, Jane Bailey. All right. Okay. So,
oh, and Vice Chair, we do need a vote on that as well.
Oh, there's two of them. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So all in favor? All opposed? All right. Thank you. Do we have any disclosure of pecuniary interest? That one's always a hard one. Okay. So, the next one would be, I believe, delegations. Am I right with that?
And through you, Vice Chair, there are currently no delegations and no briefings at this meeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So we'll move straight to business then, which is the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee 2022 report card. I believe that's going to be you, Jacqueline.
I can actually get just a quick thing. So the report card is something that comes once a year to all the standing committees from the advisory committees, and then goes on to council, especially for this one. Kind of just gives a brief summary of the amount of reports that were given to the committee over the course of the previous year, any changes in membership, and just a reiteration of the mandate of the committee to council. So it is a pretty simple, small document, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any of them going forward.
Okay. Give a few moments for that. All right. Does that need to be approved?
Yes, Vice Chair, we do need a mover and a seconder and a vote for approval.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so I will get a mover. Nikki, a seconder, Councillor Ridge. All in favor? And are there any opposed? All right. And then I guess we move over to the second item, which is the standing update report.
So I can confirm members of the, oh, there she is. Perfect.
All right, you can go ahead then.
Thank you so much. And through you, Chair, appreciate the opportunity to give a quick kind of introduction of the report, as we like to do every meeting. If I may, I also would like to take the opportunity maybe to introduce a few new staff members in the team. I don't want to put them too much on the spot, but just so the committee is aware that we've very pleased to have welcomed some new members to our our housing and homelessness team. And I will maybe ask them to quickly turn on their camera if I introduce them. So maybe to start, I will share that Rachel has joined us. Rachel is still in British Columbia, but will be joining us very shortly in person in Kingston as the project manager of housing and homeless developments. So she will be working on a lot of the affordable housing developments with the team, with John Henderson and others, and also with other departments to continue kind of the development of housing projects and some of the homelessness initiatives as well. So you will see her name probably pop up, and she will most likely be part of this committee as well in the future. So welcome, Rachel. The other new staff is Lori Kid-Velikova. Lori has joined us as the new housing programs administrator. She's replacing Joanne Boris, who some of you might have met in the past. I know, again, very excited to have Lori on the team as well. And then I also wanted to share, because I know on on the virtual meetings it's a little hard, but we will be saying a temporary goodbye to Heather Scranage for the next year and a half or so, because she will go on leave to hopefully spend some time with a new baby. She's still here for a little bit, but we are welcoming another manager to the team, which is Amy Gibson, who some of you might know as the current manager in recreational services. So you will see some new names. I thought it would be important to share so you know what's happening in the team. I also wanted to quickly, well, kind of jumping in on the standing update reports. I think that two things that you will either have seen and will see shortly is obviously City Council has, now Councillor Ridge is on the call, approved their strategic priorities, or has set some really amazing strategic priorities. A lot of them obviously are focusing on the development of housing, affordable housing, and also the focus on supporting more vulnerable unhoused populations. So if you haven't had a chance to review that, I would certainly welcome you to, or invite you to have a look at those priorities, because I think they're setting the tone for a lot of important work in the next few years. And then you will also see our Housing and Social Services annual report come out likely early next week. We'll make sure all the committee members receive a copy of that report as well, because it will give you an overview of all the work that we do and continue to do in the departments. So that, sorry, I just snuck that in there. So standing reports. What I will do is I will invite Heather to start with the kind of homelessness section, and then Mitchell and John will jump in on some of the social housing and affordable housing updates. So Heather, are you ready?
Thank you, Ruth. Yes, on the standing update, we'll start with some of the homelessness services updates. So we did see a report to council in May related to the homelessness prevention program investment plan, and we were fortunate to receive increased funding from the provincial government this year. That we provided the plan to council on, and that is for $8.76 million for homelessness services. The by name list, we continue to track by name list data and work with service providers to ensure that all individuals who are accessing homelessness services in our community are being tracked on the by name list. We did include both the Q4 2022 and Q1 2023 by name list data in this report. and do note a bit of an increase there, which we are working with service providers to monitor trends there as well. We continue to operate overnight drop-in centers and shelters. A few updates on these. So Lily's Place Family Shelter has continued to see several families that do need shelter support. So that's families with children. They have capacity for 19 individuals, and we have used motels for overflow as needed previously. And we're working with home-based housing to expand the Lily's Place shelter with some transitional housing, which is in use actually, and is supporting more individuals through that service. Kingston Youth Shelter also moved to their new location. So they have moved to their permanent home at 365 Nelson Street. And ultimately we'll have an increased occupancy of up to 21 individuals at this location, and will now be open 24 hours a day, whereas previously they did close during the daytime hours. Salvation Army opened their daytime services, which was awarded through our system review work last year. They did open those services in very early January. And between January and March, they served 334 unique individuals with a total of over 2,200 visits. So a number of people seeking services there. They offer drop-in service for a place to go have a rest, some meal and pantry items. They also refer to other community partners, do housing support work. They do have shower and laundry services as well, which is a very much needed service for individuals in our community as well. And we'll offer a variety of other services through that space also. Next, moving to sleeping cabins. So on March 21st, Council did approve the move of sleeping cabins from Portsmouth Olympic Harbor to Center 70 for the late spring, summer, and early fall. And so there are now 17 sleeping cabins located at Center 70 for at this time, and they'll be there until likely early October, at which time it's anticipated they will likely move back to Portsmouth Olympic Harbor for the fall. As directed, we also continued work with OLS on supporting community education efforts, and there have been a number of community education sessions held over the last number of months, as well as we do continue the search with them for a longer term location. Bryandale Transitional Housing recently acquired a property and have purchased that property at this time with funding from the city. And they are currently going through renovations, and it's anticipated that they will be able to open that space later this summer, and it will have space for 8 men needing support, housing support in our community. That's all on the homelessness section of the report at this time. So I will turn it over to Mitchell for some social housing program updates.
Thank you, Heather. Good afternoon, everyone, and through you, Chair. Yes, we're looking at the report. We have the responsibility at the City of Kingston as the service manager for housing and homelessness programs. So traditionally, we have been required to maintain 2003 RGI units in our portfolio, and that's traditionally been through bricks and mortar, like our social housing providers and our rent supplement units that are listed under the regulations of the Housing Services Act. There's been some recent changes to allow us to expand on that service level standard number to include any municipally funded agreements or projects that aren't listed under the HSA or the Housing Services Act or its regulations, but do allow for the rental calculations to be 30% of an individual's or household's income. So by doing that and expanding upon that, we are able to include an additional 61 units as part of our service level standards. So that's encouraging news there. In terms of the centralized wait list, nothing really too alarming or changing kind of month over month. We're usually around the, we hover between 1,200 and 1,400 households on the centralized waiting list. You'll see there was a dip in during COVID when there was the moratorium on evictions and people were not filling out applications or moving or being evicted or moving around. In terms of some specific program updates, we have been administering the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit for several years now. That's a portable housing benefit program where the subsidy follows the client and isn't tied to a specific unit. Some encouraging news starting in July is that the ministry has adjusted the calculation of the subsidy to account for 80% of average market rent, or the greater of 80% average market rent, or actual shelter costs. So that is going to mean, in all likelihood, that there's going to be a greater subsidy or deeper subsidy provided to other recipients under the program. And we have a local program, the local portable housing benefit program we started several years ago, and we are going to follow suit with the ministry calculations and apply that to our local program as well. And I guess lastly, it's not in the report, but I do want to just touch on some work we're doing that there'll likely be a standalone report for this sometime in the fall or later, maybe in Q4. But the idea of end of operating agreements or end of mortgages. So this is the idea that housing providers across the province have been funded a certain way since everything was downloaded to municipalities in 2002. So they followed what's called the benchmark formula. So a standard formula for all providers across the whole province. And the funding has been tied to the end of their mortgage. So when their mortgage expires, it was always what happens next? Are we required to fund them still? Are the housing providers able to exit the system? So there's been some new developments in that and built into the legislation. So what will take effect starting, well, it's in effect now, but when we reach end of mortgage dates for our providers, we can look at it as an individual basis, and look at different ways of funding them. So what we are doing now is we're embarking on a financial analysis kind of project with help from a consultant to look at the current state of all of our providers financially, what their financial state will be at end of mortgage or end of operating agreement, and what their financial state will be 10, 20 years down the road in terms of net operating dollars as well as kind of unfunded capital liabilities. So that's happening now. We're in about phase 2 of a 3-phase project with a consultant, and we will be bringing forward those findings to committee, like I said, likely in the fall or Q4 of this year. So that's it for social housing. So thanks, and I'll pass it over to John.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mitchell, for that. So I'll speak about affordable housing projects. I'll be quick here going through, but happy to answer any questions you might have. So affordable housing projects and units are in addition to the rent geared to income housing supply that Mitch was talking about. So those 2003 units, those are a specific program, and these affordable housing projects that are outlined in the report are in addition to those. There's currently, I did the total here, there's currently 212 units that are outlined in those projects. So it's quite an active time for affordable housing development in Kingston. And I thought it was interesting that the projects are benefiting from a wide range of funding programs. So just for background, there's of course municipal capital funding that goes into the projects. There's the Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative, which is shared federal and provincial funding. There's the Rapid Housing Initiative, which is federal government funding. There's the Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative, which is shared provincial federal funding, and the co-investment program that's available under the National Housing Strategy. So a wide range of programs, and all those programs are accessed on an application basis. So to access that funding, there's a lot of communication that goes on with the province and with the federal government to get the money. Of those units, of the 212, there's 94 of those are deep affordability. So that's a message we've heard and been understanding for a while, that affordable units, when it's a percentage of the average market rent, the 80% threshold, which is typically the threshold where funding begins, that getting further below that is definitely of need given the challenge in the community. So 94 of those units would hit deep affordability, and typically what we mean by that is 30% of income or social assistance maximum shelter. So that's good news in terms of affordable units that are going to help folks on social assistance or other fixed incomes. Since the last meeting, the council has approved a funding contribution to the Homes for Heroes project that's taking place on King Street on the provincial campus there. Council approved a about $69,000 contribution to the project, which is equal to the municipal fees collected. So the municipality essentially rebated some fees there. So that project's benefited from land contribution from the province, as well as investment from the province, and then their own fundraising efforts. And the city's made a contribution to the project, which is the amount of fees that would be collected by the city. And that's an update on everything that's happened since the last meeting.
Okay, I believe that is that for this item. Unless anybody has anything else to say, we will go to asking members of the committee if they have any questions or comments. I see Jane has their hand up.
Thank you for calling me they. I appreciate that. I did have a question, and I don't know if anybody here is in a better position than I am to answer this. Regarding the sleeping cabins, it was our understanding that people were there, residents were using the sleeping cabins for up to a 12-month stay, but that every time the cabins are moved, their 12-month stay gets restarted at 0. Does anybody have any insight to that?
You can go ahead, Ruth.
Thank you. So that's a good question. We are definitely working closely with the provider to fully understand and appreciate some of these challenges that come with moving the program back and forth. I don't know if Heather would like to jump in here. We have ongoing conversations on kind of how to interpret, with the kind of term transitional housing and the 1 year or the 4 years, and what this means for a program that's moving. And obviously, as Heather mentioned, we're looking at also at the long-term intent of this program. So I guess what I will say is, yes, we're aware. We're looking at this with our colleagues with OLS, trying to understand what the best expectation is here, but also obviously the intent is and will continue to be that people transition out of the cabins into permanent housing. That doesn't change.
Thank you. If I could just make a comment about that, I really hope that more on the frontline approach is that it's kind of case by case. That would be my hope. Is that we're not giving people a hard deadline, obviously. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Oh, go ahead, Tara.
Hi, my question is just for John. I was happy to hear about the 94 deep affordable units, and I was just wondering when that will come into effect.
Sorry, are you talking about when the units will be occupied, or?
Yeah, what's the process for that? Or are they not even built yet? So it'll be years down the road kind of thing? Yeah,
well, yes. I mean, these are new builds, right? The projects that I talked about. So they do take typically a construction of a multi-unit building takes anywhere. It's a small project, might be a year. Larger projects are 2 years. So these projects that I talked about are ones under construction or ones that will be getting construction within the next sort of 6 to 8 months. So yes, those aren't going to be available tomorrow. They'll be available over I would say without going through each of them individually, a good portion of those will be completed in 2024, and the rest will be into 2025.
Thanks.
You can go ahead.
Through you, Chair, if I may add also, maybe this is not the end. This is just the beginning. And I think that also really speaks to council priorities. I know council has identified to continue to really prioritize obviously affordable housing solutions. And that means, you know, all types of affordable housing solutions, not just 80% AMR, as John spelled out, that we know that the real solution, if you look at Ontario Works and ODSP, is, you know, very deeply affordable housing solutions. So there is a target of 480 in council strategic direction, and also a broader 4,800 housing units to be built. And in addition to that, obviously, we know there also is a broader conversation around different support services and supporting individuals when they're housed with the right services as well. So there's definitely a lot of housing coming online, but we also know that we need to continue to work on other projects to add to the pipeline.
That's great to hear. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, Ian.
So I'm not sure if this is actually the right time to raise this question, but I had a question about the section in the report. I'll try that again. The section in the report pertaining to the program for the creation of secondary units and sort of some of the financial incentives. Is this the right time to ask that question? Nobody's stopping me, so I'm going to assume yes. My question was: are applicants required to confirm that the units are not going to be used for short-term rentals?
I can take that one. So as part of the way the program's set up, the funding comes at the back end. So when the unit's completed and occupied, what we require from one of the documents required is a copy of the lease that they've signed with the home with the tenant, and that's in Ontario, that's the standard lease. So we would get that documentation showing that in that first year that it has been leased to someone. We also get a copy of the notice of assessment for their previous years to see what their income is, to make sure they're under the income limit. Yeah, so we do have those checks in place to make sure the unit wouldn't be just put into the short-term rental market.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? I'm not seeing anybody. So if there are any members of the public, can we move to the members of the public's questions?
I do see one currently, Vice Chair, but I will also just remind all the members who are joining us virtually, who is everybody, sorry, I'm used to the hybrid model as well, so it's like my script kind of gets stuck in my head there, that there should be a yellow hand button at the bottom of your screen, and if you click that, a hand will come up and I'll be able to see and be able to recognize you. So I do see one, Vice Chair, and they are Saida Jaffer.
All right, well, go ahead, Saida.
Hi, good afternoon. I have a few questions, if that's okay. So maybe I'll just ask them all and then you can decide who should answer them, because some of them are clarifications. So one of them has to do with the 2003 RGI units. I was wondering, so I'm a little confused. So are there 2003 units that are currently operating in Kingston as an RGI unit? And if not, why not? Like, I guess that was not entirely clear to me from the report. And then secondly, Mitchell referenced an additional 61 units due to a change in calculation. And I just didn't fully grasp the significance of that change, or like what that means one way or the other. So if it's okay to just get some clarification on that too, or just what that looked like. And then my third question actually is just a follow-up to what one of the members just asked about the secondary suites. That's great to know that they have to show a lease. But I just wonder if there's any additional protection, because people can, lease out a place for a year and then put put it on the short-term rental market, and if they're getting like a large subsidy from the city, are there any steps that the city is taking or could take to ensure that that unit stays in the rental market for a longer period of time? Thanks.
All right, so I think the first question was about the 2003 units.
Pardon me, Vice Chair. We're just going to see if we can get any of the other members of the public that wish to speak, because then we can get all the public members' comments, and then staff can have an opportunity to answer. So we'll just give it a couple moments. And I'm not seeing any further movement, so we're good.
Okay.
Vice Chair.
Thank you. All right, so who would like to answer first?
Thank you. I think I will start, and then I know probably Mitch will jump in. So Yida, to your question, so the 2003 units are is that kind of mandatory number that we're supposed to operate in our community. About 1,500 of those are actual bricks and mortar units, and about 500 are kind of rent supplements and portable housing benefits. I think Mitch is the best to speak to the 60, the number of kind of additional units that are added, but we are, I guess what I will say is we are delivering that number in our community. I know sometimes there are some conversations around units being empty or not being utilized, but we are delivering that number. I don't know if Mitch wants to jump in and clarify the 60 number.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ruth, and through you, Chair. So yeah, the 61 units, in terms of significance, I guess, as Ruth said, we are meeting, so we're prescribed to meet the 2003. There was a report that came out from the Auditor General a few years ago now, asking for service managers to find ways to meet their service level standards, because many weren't meeting them. So through that consultation, it was determined, it was like, what would benefit you? The question came to us as service managers, and we said, as part of our response back and our advocating back to them was to say, it would be extremely beneficial if we could include municipal funded programs that aren't necessarily listed under the Housing Services Act. So we were meeting our targets. Now we're above our targets. So what that will allow us to do is kind of play with that target level a bit. So through the, as I mentioned, like the EOM, the end of operating and end of mortgage analysis we're working through, those providers that are fully 100% RGI or rent geared to income operating, we can look at lowering their target levels and increase their market rents. So lowering our service levels, still staying above our 2003, but dropping them a little bit, and then increasing their portfolio with market to make them more financially viable. So it just allows us a little more wiggle room and ability to play at the local level to ensure all of our providers are viable in the long term. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And then to the last question.
Yeah, so this is addressing the question about secondary suites and concerns about whether the unit will be maintained in the rental market. So the affordability period, or the term of the agreement for the secondary suite program, is 5 years. So when someone rents on that first tenancy, as I mentioned, we do see the lease, we do see a notice of assessment indicating they've rented to an income qualified household at an affordable rate. What else comes to mind for me is we've got a few homeowner programs. So there's this program, secondary suites, there's the homeownership program, and there's the Kingston Frontenac Renovates programs. So over the years, the total of those is probably in the 600 or 700 neighborhood of homeowner agreements that we have. We used to do annual checks on those years ago when we maybe had 150 or 200. But getting up that 600 or 700 number, it gets administratively burdensome to have a staff member dedicated to that. When we were doing those mailouts, we didn't find a significant or even small amount of people that weren't in compliance with their agreement. So it's a very small number that risk would be. So we determined based on the level of effort put into that, that it was not something that was of benefit to us to put that effort in just to make sure everyone was compliant, because generally everybody was. So I think that's going it's going like that across a lot of programs where the checks that were put in place that were quite time consuming, now they're taking off because they're realizing the percentage of people that aren't complying is actually quite small.
All right, thank you for that. And now I guess if there are no further comments or questions, we will go to asking for a mover and a seconder.
No. Just through you, Vice Chair, there is no recommendation with this report. It was just for information. So you're good to move on to the next one.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm going to get really good at this, I promise. So we will move on to the next agenda item. Sorry, I'm just scrolling. Which is information report to Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee, general eviction process and landlord and tenant board data. Am I correct with that? Okay, and you can go ahead. I think Ruth's going to talk.
Thank you to you, Chair. This will not be such a long introduction, but just wanted to provide some context for the report that is in front of you. So in August 2022, previous council passed 2 motions that specifically requested information on some of the eviction data and measures that as a city we could explore or work through. And also ask staff to, and I'm kind of paraphrasing this very shortly because I don't want to read through the whole motion. I know it's in the reports, but basically also asking staff to provide data or to review data provided by the landlord and tenant boards. So what's in front of you is hopefully a report that's providing a lot of the kind of different context in because I know there are a lot of different pieces that are coming together on the kind of unlawful evictions, the Residential Tenancies Act, landlord termination rights, and also the various kind of enforcement provisions. After August, not only well, we obviously also had a few kind of different provincial changes come to us through different various bills. So, and we had an ombudsman report that was shared on kind of the landlord and tenant board. So we really wanted to provide you a report with all the different kind of pieces, so you have some context of how this is all impacting us as a community and ultimately tenants and landlords. We also had the ability to receive and review the eviction data that we have for Kingston. So we have summarized that as well in this report. And we also wanted to just give you an update on some of the initiatives that are happening. Again, I think council has been quite clear on this as well, and has directed staff to work on some different initiatives, including rental licensing and kind of reviewing demolition control bylaw. So there is a lot of it in the work. So this will be an ongoing, this is a first kind of information report to provide you that information, also to satisfy some of the motions from last year. What I also am excited to share is that we have had some resources or the ability to put together an handbook for tenants with information about the eviction process and kind of their obviously the supports that they have, because I know this process can be quite intimidating and challenging for tenants. So that handbook will be going live, and there will be a communication strategy to make sure that it's going to be that we actually are able to share that with the right individuals. So really just kind of a quick introduction of why this is in front of you. I know there's a lot of information in the report. There might be some follow-up questions. We obviously worked really closely with our colleagues at Legal Services as well. So happy to take any questions on this report.
All right, thank you. And if there are any questions or comments from the committee, you can go ahead. I have one myself, but I want to wait. You can go ahead, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say it was so informative. I think some of it is sort of skewed because some of the information is based on pandemic years, which was really skewed for landlord and tenant board stopping hearings and that type of thing over some of that time. So, but yeah, it's great to have, and I'm so happy to see that that municipally we're going to be, advocating and trying to help with that knowledge and information for tenants. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments? So if I will take my own question and comment. So while doing a bit of research through both Bill 97, the Ombudsman's report, and everything, just wondering, like, if there are any kind of hurdles that we faced or anything that the city, well, I guess that this is the city going above Bill 97 and making our own kind of mandates and everything. And there will be data collection for that, correct?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I can start, and happy to have my colleagues jump in as well. So we actually we were able to receive the data from the LTB for the purposes of this request. We will be depending on continuing to receive data from the LTB on this. We obviously have, and I know this is not necessarily my department that's doing that work, but the broader kind of work on the rental licensing, obviously there will be, we do want to kind of get a better handle on the data that we can access. But we will be, I think as a city, and I'm just kind of basing this on the data that we've been able to receive, we will sometimes be depending on other agencies to provide us with that data, such as the LTB. So that will be a risk, or that will be a reality, I think, that we need to recognize. I think with the Ombudsman report, as folks might have read, there definitely are a lot of recommendations to increase a lot of that process. So we cannot, obviously we can speculate and hope that will create some better transparency as well.
I just, before I move on to Kathy, I just want to say that I'm thankful that the city is also making its own motions and initiatives to help our tenants and make sure that both tenants and landlords have more protections, and things are really clarified. So the next question is through Kathy. You can go ahead. Oh, you might be muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
There, good. In regards to the provincial policy statement, where I notice in the notes, it still says that there's comment available until June. That's now been extended by 60 days from what I understand. Is there concern or comment even about the fact that affordability has been dropped completely from that policy statement?
Go ahead.
Thank you to you, Chair. Thanks for that comment. I will be incredibly transparent and honest that I appreciate that comment, and I would have to take that. I mean, of course, we through the housing and homelessness lens and the reality of needing deeply affordable and affordable housing across the continuum. We obviously hope that there is provincially as much a focus on that as well. I will say, and I know just kind of from a local level, I think we are also trying to focus on what can we do locally to make that happen. I know there was, and I don't recall the council meeting that this was presented, but there was a council report with a lot of the kind of staff responses and to kind of some of the Bill 97 and kind of changes. So happy to share that as well for the committee. I think it actually was referred to this so it was May 16th. So definitely staff have made some proactive comments on that as well.
Thank you. I just wonder if there's, I wonder what would happen if the city was trying to impose affordability measures and the policy statement doesn't have anything in it. Now, I also understand from the minister's office that there may be it will be addressed in other areas. That's what I understand. But I just would like us to maybe keep an eye on that. That can be.
Do you, Chair, if I may maybe kind of comment on that? Because yes, I think that is an important comment, Kathy. Again, I think we have a couple of kind of projects and initiatives that we are working through across departments. Obviously, we will be working on a new official plan. We are looking at additional financial incentives to develop affordable housing and housing overall. So I think it's important to continue to focus on that. And again, I think locally there is that focus. And we have some very clear direction on various initiatives to continue to put affordable housing front and center in the work that we do.
Thank you very much.
I just have one more really quick comment, and this one's an easy one. So I am really happy to see that there's an eviction awareness handbook. I remember when I was dealing with evictions and homelessness, I think the agency might have been Clio, who had handbooks that I would use and that I would give to my friends, right? I just was wondering if there is a physical version of this handbook or if it's only digital.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So no, we are looking at obviously a variety of ways of getting this into the hands of people that need it. We obviously will be working with our colleagues at service agencies, but also, so no, it absolutely will not only be virtual because we know that will not necessarily reach everybody. But we will be obviously hoping to get some feedback from our colleagues as well to make sure what the best way is to get it out. We also recognize that this is probably going to be a pretty fluid, or it's going to be a living document. So we just want to make sure that we do what we can in this, knowing that it's not necessarily the only thing that we can do as a committee. Yeah.
I'm very thankful that resource is out there. Are there any other questions from the committee? I'm looking and I don't see any. Do we have any questions or comments from the public?
So I did quickly see a hand and then it disappeared. So just a reminder to any members of the public that do wish to speak, if you press the little hand and keep it raised until I can recognize you, otherwise I can miss you. So I keep seeing Tara Kaner keep raising and lowering her hand, so I'm going to allow her to speak.
All right.
Sorry, it says lower hand and when I tried to raise it anyhow. Okay, so my question is that in the report, there's a comment that the city will be waiting until Bill 97 is implemented and when they can gauge the effect of Bill 97 before they proceed to deal with, the motion that Mr. Hutchison, Councillor Hutchison put through to track the evictions. So can you tell me when Bill 97 will be implemented and what criteria will you use to gauge the effectiveness of it?
All right, you can go ahead, Jenna.
Thank you, and through you, Vice Chair. I can't say when Bill 97 will come into effect. We're awaiting regulations to implement certain provisions, including the provisions that are intended to protect against rent evictions. And we want to see just how strong those provisions are going to be in the regulations, because we know that we've seen a new requirement that any notice of termination for purposes of completing renovations will require the landlord to obtain a letter from a qualified professional indicating that vacant possession of the units required to complete the renovations. We want to understand what type of professional that would be, what the requirements would be in the letter from that professional in order to gauge whether that's going to be sufficient protection. If and when we determined that additional policies were required to combat rent evictions, that would be something we'd look at through the context of a rental licensing bylaw, which council's directed us to bring back later this year.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the public?
So reminder to other members of the public, you please raise your virtual hand at the bottom of your screen. And I'm not seeing any movement, Madam Chair. My apologies, Vice Chair. Just Vice Chair. Sorry.
Thank you. All right. So then I guess we will ask. We won't ask for a mover or seconder because it was an informational. I got it. And I believe that was the last business item, right?
Yes, Chair, Vice Chair.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have any motions at all?
I have received no motions or notices of motion.
Thank you. Do we have any other business at all? No. Okay. All right. So the date and time of our next meeting is Thursday, August 24th, 2023 at 1 p.m. And to adjourn our meeting, I am going to ask for a vote. Can I have a mover? So Ian, and a seconder. Jacqueline. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Oh, Vice Chair, we just need a quick vote.
Oh, okay. All in favor? All opposed? I don't see anyone. I'm thinking Kathy's hand is late. So now we're good.
Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you so much. Bye.